Hello again, football fans, and welcome to the recap of round one of the RFL draft. It is officially in the books. You guys watched all the team previews, all the lead up, all the hype, all the anticipation for the last 3 weeks for some of you, 5 weeks for some of you. It is all over. It is here. The time is now. Round one of the RFL draft was tonight, and we're going to talk about it. There's a lot to talk about, and I don't think that there's anyone who is more neck deep, knee deep, thigh high, however you want to refer to it. There's nobody that is more involved or more dedicated to the college series than the head coach of the Ohio State University, and that is the man that goes by the name of Pecan. So I'm going to bring Pecan in, and we're going to talk about round one, right? Like, we're going to talk about the first overall pick. We're going to talk about the 23rd overall pick. We're going to talk about whatever pick you want. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, if you are a draft prospect and you thought that your name was going to be called tonight and you did not hear your name, we want to hear from you, right? So, Pecan, I bring you in, my friend. Round one is in the books. This is, for me, I everybody who knows me knows this, and by this I mean tonight is like my favorite day of the entire year. And if that's my favorite day, I can't imagine that it's not also your favorite day. What say you about round one of the RFL draft tonight?
I mean, this is the RFL Christmas to so many people, and
Yeah,
just as it was Christmas yesterday, and it's
yeah,
Christmas here in the RFL. It's so nice to see, there's no better feeling than seeing a lot of those college series players' name where it just changed from college series prospects to, you know, cornerbacks, so and so, the Cougars, the
yeah.
Bulldogs next to their name. There's no better feeling than that. And I just want to say congrats to all the 32 guys who got drafted in the first round. And just like you were saying, there's probably a lot of guys who felt like that they could have gone in the first round. Don't get discouraged because the RFL draft is one of the few drafts where even someone who played in the who gets drafted in the second, third, or fourth round can still make a name for themselves. So this was a very fun draft. Obviously we got some winners and maybe clear loser based off the discussions we have seen, but there's so much to
Yeah.
go over. But me as a coach for Ohio State, I'm excited. We broke Georgia's first round record of most picks in the first round, with 8 guys selected in this class, selected in the first round. I'm proud of each and every one of them. And we still have 13 players left to be drafted. So but man, what a draft. What a first round this was. I mean, and especially for y'all. So I'm sure you're excited about the 3 picks that you guys got.
Well, and I think for you, like, you brought up a good point, right? Like, 8 Ohio State players taken in the first round. But I even go back, forget about 8 in the first round, 4 of the top 8. Like, we were an hour and a half into the draft, and 50% of the players that were taken were from Ohio State, right? So obviously that's got to make you feel really good. We can talk about Wyatt Harris going number one overall. Like, I guess I'll go ahead and pull it up here so we can so you guys can see at home, right? Like, we've got the first overall pick. You can see it at the bottom of your screen, but also we've got it shared here for you as well. So Wyatt Harris goes number one overall. Pecan, I think we kind of all thought that this was where it was going to go.
Yeah.
The only other thought process here was if the Cougars wanted to go quarterback, because we knew that they were gonna go quarterback, but there's no real need to force the issue here. So Wyatt Harris is the smart pick, and 81 overall. I maybe you got to go back a long ways to find an 81 overall as a rookie, right? Like
Tyler Cage, the last one.
was he
That
an
says a
81?
lot. Tyler Cage was an 81.
He was an
Yeah.
81. So like Drew Brewer, I don't think was an 81. Like we've seen some guys that 81 is not common. Um, Dior Gore going number 2, not really that much of a surprise. I think if you followed the Diablos and their offseason and realized that they traded away their number 1 wide receiver, that they had the opportunity to now get the receiver to replace Piku McCullough, this is not a very surprising pick. I guess the question that I have for you, Pecan, here is if we look at these picks, right? Like let's look at the top 4 or 5 picks. Was this complete chalk for you, or was there a pick in here that you were a little bit surprised by?
Well, to be fair, I think in my last mock I had really as soon as we all saw the Diablos go to 2, after them getting rid of that 99 overall of Piku McCullough, once they got rid of him, and then Diablos made that trade to the Bisons, like it kind of yeah, like they're getting Dior. Like they are going to go get Dior. You don't trade all those assets away, to not take this, the star wide receiver of this class. Um, so because everyone thought that he was going to go to the Barons, because that was the whole point of the Barons of them trading Cube Puck away was,
All right.
oh well, the Barons are going to go get Dior now. Well, the Diablos just took Dior Gore. Um, Honestly was not expecting them to go with Nick O'Quinn. I probably would have thought, maybe they would have gone somewhere else with that. Barron's kind of shocked me because I wasn't expecting them to go with Nick O'Quinn, and I wasn't expecting them to go with Charlie Dodson there at 23. I had them mocked somewhere else, but really the Diablos trade to go into that number 2 pick of getting Dior Gore really did change everything up of what the Barons are going to do. So really, the top 5 went exactly how I thought it would play out, except for the Barons pick. That was the only one.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time researching and scouting and doing deep dives, and I asked you the question, right? Like, was there a surprise here? And part of the reason why I asked you was because I feel the same way, and that Nick O'Quinn was a, a, a great addition to any team, right? However, if you told me that I had the 3rd pick in the draft and Ethan Marks was still available and Manny Rojas was still available and I needed an edge rusher, I feel like I would have been more inclined to take one of those 2 guys. Now, there is a difference between an edge rusher that is a pure lineup defensive end type of edge rusher versus a linebacker type of edge rusher. And clearly the Barons recognized that and decided ultimately that they wanted that more of a smaller linebacker type of edge rusher, a little bit more of a speed rusher, not a power rusher, right? Manny Rojas and Ethan Marks are both 280, right? 285. Like they're the big edge rushers that
Those
Nick
pure
O'Quinn is
offensive
not.
ends. Yeah.
Right. Right. So I get it if that was your plan all along, but also to a point that you brought up a minute ago, that wasn't their plan all along. I
No,
think we all agree their plan all along was to take
was to
Dior
take Dior
Gore.
Gord.
And so it didn't work out. The trade happened. The Diablos moved up. So let's talk about the Diablos for a second because the Diablos moving up to 2 overall, great for them. They basically replaced Piku McCullough with Dior Gore. And while that's not going to reap the immediate benefit, right? But 2 or 3 years from now, the additional players and assets that they got in this deal will ultimately help out and everything will work out. But I think we can look at this first round and say, at least for now, even though the Diablos got Dior Gore, if we take a quick look down at what the Bisons were able to get at 1-6, right? Like there was conversation that Ethan Marks might go 1-2.
Yeah,
And that would have been the Bison's pick. So the idea that you could have traded down 4 picks and then also gotten additional draft capital, right? And not just additional draft capital, they got another first round pick, right? So they traded down from 2 to 6. And we could make the argument here, Pecan, they got the same exact guy they were going
they
to
got the
get.
same exact pick that the Bisons were going to take from the very start.
Right. So if you're the like I if you're the Diablos, you're not complaining. Don't get me wrong. Let's not get this twisted. If you are the Diablos, you got Dior Gore, you are ecstatic. However, if you're the Bisons and you
You
were
still
gonna
got
get
what you want.
right, you were gonna take the guy at 2, you get the guy at 6, and then you just take a quick jaunter down.
This, yeah.
Where are we at?
They had the
Where'd they go?
16th. They had the
16. No,
sixth. No,
16 was us. 18, 18.
18. That's right.
So they go Ethan Marks at 6, which they were going to take at 2. We all think, and maybe they weren't, but the reality is they probably, if you got Ethan Marks at 6, you were probably thinking about him at 2 if you were there. So then they also get the 18. Now, this is where things got a little bit weird because there was a lot of conversation that Bo Sanders was not going to be a first round pick. If I'm being honest with you, I did not have Bo Sanders in my first round. I don't think that it's anything to do with his ability or his talent
Oh,
or
none at
any of
all.
that. It's all about fit.
And the
And
value of a running back and the value of running backs in today's play and style. But
correct.
and to me, this was kind of like, everyone kind of thought, well, you look at what the Red Dragons have at running back, everyone thought if there was a spot that he would have gone, it would have gone there because the Bison still have some holes that they need to fill up. Like they still got some holes that they clearly need to get right. But I still think this is a win for them because I would have had I had them taking someone like a Zach Tank, before all of the trades happened with their 2.2 picks. So they ended up getting their running back of the future in Bo Sanders. So I mean, for them to get the pick that they wanted with Marks at 6 after they moved from 2, and then they go and get clearly the best running back prospect we have ever seen coming into the college series, a two-time running back of the year award winner. I mean, a two-time national champion, and we all saw his tape. We all saw how he plays. I think this was an outstanding draft for the Bisons.
Yeah, I think when you're drafting, certainly when you're drafting in the first round, your goal, if possible, is to get the best player at the position, right? Regardless, if you can get the best player at the position, whatever the position is, you're feeling pretty good. And so when you look at what the Bisons were able to do, the Bisons got what I think, and probably what you think, and what most people think is the best edge rusher in Ethan Marks. And I know that you have a bias towards Nick O'Quinn. That's fine. But I think
He's
even
the
you
best
would
edge
agree.
line backer. Marks is clearly the best edge rusher in
Sure.
this class.
So for the Bisons, you got the best edge rusher and you got the best running back. Now, if you're a fan of the Bisons, I don't know what more you can ask for,
Yeah,
right? Like
they
you
were
got a
cheering.
you got a dude that's going to get to the quarterback and you got a dude that's going to take the ball from the quarterback and you can rely on both of them. And they're both going to start day 1 and I I think you could make an argument that the Bisons might get offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Like there's a scenario where that could happen, and I hate it because
And
I'm
they
in
just
their
had offensive
division.
rookie of the year last year. They just had him last year with Kentaro, and they could get it 2 years in a row. And we've all been hearing the talk about how Madden 26 is very The running back,
The
like
running
this could
back.
be the year of the running, the year of the running back on Madden
Yeah.
26 for the RFL. So this could be a big year for Bo.
Yeah. I again, I don't love it because I have to play them twice a year.
Yeah,
Historically, I've never really been all that worried about the Bisons, but when I had the sixth pick prior to making the Piku McCullough trade, I can share this information now. I have a post-it note, just like Kevin Costner in the movie Draft Day. I have a post-it note that says Ethan Marks, no matter what. And with the
yeah.
sixth pick in the draft, I was taking Ethan Marks no matter what. And the fact that he went sixth overall is kind of fitting, but that the Bisons got him and that they also turned around and got Bo Sanders, it's not great for me and my squad.
Now it makes
I
sense
think
why
it's,
you took two offensive tackles.
I mean, listen, I don't want to deal with it. So before we get too far into that, like, let's go back a little bit and look at some of the other picks. So we talked about the top four, top five. And then obviously, if we're going to go Xavier Savage at four, Casey Chestnut at five, obviously we talked about Ethan Marks. The Cougars going Jack Sky at seven. The Tigers go Steve McCaskill, your boy. And then the Cougars go quarterback Dylan Lewis at nine. So when I look at these 1 through 9 here, there are two picks that I don't love. Um, and neither one of them are going to make you happy.
That's fine.
So I don't love the Jack Sky pick to the Cougars. It's not that I don't love the Jack Sky pick, period. It's that I don't love the Jack Sky pick to the Cougars. If Jack Sky had gone to the Sentinels, which we thought were going to take a corner and they did,
Yeah,
I
and
would
we'll
have been
talk about
I
that soon.
and we'll talk about that in a minute, and I would have been
Yeah.
fine with it. But I don't like Jack Sky to the Cougars. And the biggest reason I say that is because what we have seen from the Chicago Cougars in the last basically 2 years has been a little bit of dysfunction, a little bit of drama. Like, I I apologize if I'm not using the word that is, going to make you feel better about it. But the reality of the situation is there's been something a little bit off with the Cougars, and a lot of it has been inside the locker room. And when I look at a player like Jack Sky, I think there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of conversation about what that is going to look like in a locker room, any locker room at all. But when you turn
Yeah.
around and you put it in that locker room of all the locker rooms in the world, listen, if Jack Sky was available at 16, I would have taken him and I would have made it work. But I think there's a fundamental difference between what's going on, at least historically, in the Miners locker room versus the Cougars locker room. And I worry a little bit about what's going to happen if the Cougars don't play well this year. What if they don't, you know, what if they don't finish above 500? What if they don't make the playoffs? What if it happens 2 years in a row? What is Jack Sky going to be like? Because clearly he's opinionated, he is passionate, and love him or hate him for it, that's the way that he is. And we've seen that before in the Cougars locker room, and it didn't work out that well. So I that's where I would throw a little pause for the Jack Sky pick. I know he's your boy. You tell me your thoughts, and if you agree at all, or if you just think that I'm making a bigger deal out of it than it really is.
I'm gonna have to go with the latter there. I think Jack. I think maybe if we were talking about CS6 Jack, maybe, but as someone who has been here and has coached Jack for 3 years now, I've seen this kid grow into quite a player. I know he could still annoy people with the way he is, but I think there was a clear, from last year, and I'm not going to say names, But there's been some people who have exited out of the locker room from the Cougars last year who made it dysfunctional and the butting heads. And now this year he's bringing in three Ohio State guys who have been, who I could say in my locker room have been just clear, level-headed, all about the team, and we've had some tough losses. I mean, everyone watched us, lose in the embarrassing way, to Clemson back in CS7. And the way that they handled it, the way they carried themselves, the way that Jack, Wyatt, Dylan, um, they are none but team guys through and through. And I think what Mix is trying to rebuild there, and he's had the talks with Jack, and I've had the talks with Jack, and I think of Jack follows very well into what Mix is going to do. And I think Jack has grown up a lot these last 3 years. And I just think he's a great fit for Mix. And he kind of vibes well with the teacher role type of coach, uh, that I have been for the last 3 years, and and obviously of what Mix has been. And just like I said, the Cougars have done a great job with the locker room that they've had, for this year, because there were some people there that just butted head, and now they are gone. Those guys are gone, and I think this is a perfect place for Dylan Lewis, Jack Sky, and Wyatt Harris to step into. And I think. And Jack wanted to play for Mix. Jack wanted to play for Mix out of anybody. He wanted to play for Mix. So if there's anybody that I trust out of anything that's going to do his absolute best for Mix, it's going to be Jack.
So it's interesting. Like, obviously, you've had those conversations. You coached him all year long. I'm sure that the back and forth was happening all the time throughout the season. And to Mix's credit, right? Like, he has said from day one, I'm trying to change the culture in Chicago, right? Like, I think if he could fit that in a hashtag, he would, right? Like, if you could somehow come up with hashtag, I'm changing the culture in Chicago, onto a graphic, onto a press release, onto a newsletter, Mix would do it. Rob would do it. And I commend him for that. I genuinely do. And I talked to him earlier, and like I look in the chat and I see him. He's like, this is exactly why I didn't want to join this podcast. You can't say that because you didn't know that I was going to say this. And if you did know that I was going to say this, well, then maybe the thought process is accurate. I don't hate the pick. If you can get a 78 overall DB with star dev, and let's be honest, I'll also say this, he's younger than Xavier Savage. So I could make the argument that I would rather have a 22-year-old Jack Sky at 78 overall star dev than a 24-year-old Xavier Savage at 80 overall star dev. Like, I can easily make that argument. So to get
And I
the
also think
guy,
it's just how Jack Sky rubs you. It really depends on the way that, because some people may not like the way that Jack works.
sure. But
That's
we
that's
see
the other
that
thing too. Yeah.
we see that with, 30% of the RFL, right? Like, there are plenty of guys that we could say exactly what you just said. This guy rubs me the wrong way. This guy, I just can't
Yeah.
stand. But when you get him in your locker room, it's totally different. And so I don't hate the pick. I just think it's interesting, right? Like, that's all. It was interesting to see Jack Sky be the guy. At the end of the day, I thought Dylan Lewis was going to be the guy, but he ultimately turns out to be the guy because he goes there at 9 overall anyway. Now, what I thought we were going to see at 8, and I said this, if you watched my Tigers team preview, I said that the Tigers at 8 were either going to go edge, either Ethan Marks or Manny Rojas, if
Cornerback.
one of them were there, or they were going to go corner with Jack Sky or Xavier Savage if one of them was there. Now, one of those 4 players was there. And they didn't take Manny Rojas at 8, which I thought was the absolute like no-brainer pick. If if I could have Miles and Killian Bain here right now, they would tell you we were all in our locker room chat saying this has to be this has to be Manny Rojas. And then Miles says, "Well, I don't know. What if they went wide receiver?" And I was like, "Why would they go wide receiver?" And sure enough, they go wide receiver. I I know you're going to love the pick because he's your boy, but
Yeah.
can you I mean, can you at least understand where maybe Manny Rojas was more of a need here for the Tigers instead of Steve McCaskill?
I can see why they went with Steve McCaskill because I mean, no offense to Carlos Lozon, but they need wide receiver help big time. But I could still see why Manny Rojas could have gone here. I was actually very shocked to see Manny Rojas to fall out of the top 10. Now, obviously, with Jack Sky going to the Cougars, maybe they could have reached for Brian. I mean, now that we know the overalls of what these players are, and we just saw with Brian Robinson's overall, they could have gone him there because let's not forget the Tigers had the 32nd worst passing defense in the RFL last year. I get it that wide receiver is a big help. I am excited for my boy Steve. Um, but don't the Tigers not pick again until what is it, the
I
fourth
think they
round?
pick round 3 if
It's something like that.
I have it. Let's see. Oh god, it's so far.
Yeah, they don't pick again till round 3. And we've already what done?
3-2. They pick
We
3-2.
we
Yeah.
just saw how many cornerbacks go in this first round.
So what are you gonna do now?
Because obviously in the second round, Vinny Ball is still on the board. Brandon Cherry is still on the board. I mean, really, out of all the big names, like what other big names besides the two LSU guys are left? Like we just saw Wiggins, Errol, all Elijah Carter, which we'll get to. Uh, we just saw all the big names out of the users that you could have had are now all gone,
Mhm.
and really the big two left are the two generic cornerbacks, and they're not here. I mean, and they're still there, like, and there's no way that either of those guys fall to the Tigers with that third round pick. So,
No, Vinny
I
Ball
mean,
and Brandon Cherry will be gone in round 2, and the Tigers will be left with whatever is there, right? I mean, you look at here's a quick. You look at Kai Cash. Obviously, no surprise to see the
yeah,
quarterback
you are
of
going to
the
support,
Tigers.
yeah.
The Tigers made
Love
the right
getting
pick,
another
of
weapon.
course,
Yeah.
right? Like, why wouldn't you want another young, potential star wide receiver? Um, let's take a quick peek out to the chat for a minute. Oh, what's this? You like stirring the pot? I don't. I mean, I don't. I. How am I stirring the pot? What are you? Are you saying that I'm stirring the pot because of what I said about Jack Sky? Like, if you call that stirring the pot, fine. All I'm literally saying is everything that I've read from all of you in the chats about the back and forth. So you can say I'm stirring the pot all you want, but the reality is I'm not the one creating this narrative. I'm not the one starting all of this. It just so happens that it worked out the way that it did. Um, what else do we got?
Someone said Ethan Nation, but Ethan
Yeah, but
Nation,
they could have him in
I
the
do
third
agree.
round. You could have him in the third
Yeah,
round,
yeah. Because
but
I
that
honestly,
that's fine. But okay, I guess okay. Let's take a couple extra seconds here and talk about the Tigers. Would you rather Steve McCaskill at wide receiver and Ethan Nation at corner, or would you rather Manny Rojas at defensive end and somebody like Jamie LaRue or Rohan Boxy at wide receiver in round 3?
because there
Right?
is
Like,
still going to be a bunch of wide receivers there. I mean, I have them Tank and Talon. Colin Ross.
in round three. Fine. Even
Right.
even more to the
The
point.
thing is though is that I still think this is a great pick for the Tigers because obviously they need help at the wide receiver spot. You can make an argument that wide receiver was not their biggest need, and that can be true. But they just haven't had the weapons, and I feel like of what Steve has done for the last 4 years, I still think it's a great pick, but could it also be one of those things where it can turn into a Bengals thing where, like, okay, great, we got all these weapons, but we're still, at least now we can score 30 points a game while we're also giving up 30 points a game. So
Right.
maybe they needed that player to help them score those 30 points a games because they keep on giving up 30 points a game. So
All right. So after the Tigers, we saw the Cougars go Dylan Lewis. No surprise here. I guess the only real surprise, and we can probably skip and talk about the quarterback position as a whole. We saw Dylan Lewis go first, ninth overall to the Cougars. But then we actually saw Colorado Rivers go 14th to the Diablos ahead of Jaden Young. And there's a lot of people, and myself included, that could have made the argument that Jaden Young should have been the first quarterback taken. And so the idea that he was not even the top two, when I think most people thought that there was a a tier of Jaden Young and Dylan Lewis, and then Colorado Rivers was in
I think
a little
Rivers
bit of a
and
separate
then the
tier,
everybody else.
and then everybody else. Correct.
Yeah,
I think there are three tiers of quarterback. Jaden Young and Dylan Lewis were in tier one. Colorado Rivers was in tier two by himself. And then everybody else was in tier three. So the idea that the Diablos went up and got Colorado Rivers at 14 instead of Jaden Young is I think we agree that this is more about the Diablos wanting to get their guy. They liked Colorado Rivers more than Jaden Young. I don't think this has anything to do with the talent of Jaden Young, because if you look at it, Colorado Rivers is a 75 overall, and then Jaden Young went 19 overall to the Steamers, and
right.
he's a 76 overall. So clearly, Jaden Young on paper is the better quarterback, but
Then
for
Rivers.
the Diablos and what they want to do, they thought that Colorado Rivers was the better fit. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If I'm being honest, I did the same thing a couple years ago when a lot of people wondered why I didn't take Monte Wyatt
Monty
or
Wyatt
why
or
I didn't take Tajay
Taj
Gaddy.
Gaddy. Yeah.
Why did you take Miles McCain? Well, I took Miles McCain for a reason. And I don't think anybody's coming at me anymore wondering
No.
why I took Miles McCain, right? Like, so go and get your guy, the guy that you like, the guy that's going to fit your scheme, the guy that you feel comfortable with. I don't have a problem with the Diablos going and getting Colorado Rivers. But I think where we both have a problem here is back to the 10th pick, where the Orlando Sentinels were on the clock, and we all thought that they were going to take a DB, and they
We at
did.
least knew, right, right. We all knew that they needed to go cornerback here because they also had one of the worst passing defenses in the league.
So they're on the clock. Now, in their defense, I know what you're going to say, and everyone else is probably going to say it in the chats. Elijah Carter was not the third best DB in the draft class. But if Jack Sky is gone and Xavier Savage are gone, and we agree that those are the two best, just like I said a minute ago with the Diablos,
It's almost like a tier thing as well, where it's like Xavier Savage, Sky, Brian Robinson's in that little third tier. Kenzo
and
Udo
then
maybe is in a
everybody
tier, and then
else.
everybody else just falls
Right.
falls falls in.
So if you're the Diablos, and I'm defending you by saying you got your guy, I don't hate the fact that you got a guy that was a lower overall, even though you took him earlier. I'm not hating on that. You got the guy that you wanted all along. Good for you. So if I'm going to say that about the Diablos, I also want to say that about the Sentinels. But The difference is that with the cornerback position, there are so many guys that were available. You could make an argument. I don't know. We talked about Vinny Ball. We talked about Brandon Cherry. They have not been drafted yet,
So we don't know
but
what they're going to be. Right.
we don't know what they're going to be. But I'm going to tell you right now, Pecan. I think you can tell me whether you would agree or disagree. I think Brandon Cherry and Vinny Ball are at worst 71.
That's a possibility, especially with the way I mean, Vinny Ball was one of the best players in CS7 at the
And
cornerback spot, and we just
and
saw the
Brandon Cherry.
amazing playoff performance in year that Brandon Cherry just
Right.
had. We haven't talked about Elijah Carter in any of the SNs since CS6. We haven't talked about Elijah Carter being, oh, he's cornerback 5 or like we just haven't. Um, I mean, you can make a case with it being like a Diablos thing, and with you where it's like you do the interviews, you get to know these players, but that's all fine and great if you have a great relationship with the player. I can understand it for a cornerback spot because yes, even though you took Miles McCain, I mean, what Monty was only what like only 3 overalls better, and Tajay was like maybe what like 2 or 1. There's a
Yeah, they
big
were all
difference.
close.
Right, but there's cornerback is still different, that's still different. There's a big difference from because Brian Robinson was a 76. Kenzo Udo, he got drafted, he's a 73. Sean Wiggins was a 72. Errol Matthews was a 72. And we don't know where Brandon Cherry or Benny Ball. You just took maybe possibly cornerback 8, cornerback 9 at pick number 10 with your first round pick.
Yeah, so like I'm gonna pull up. Let's see if I can pull up Errol here also. And then who was the other one that we saw? Tayshawn, right?
Yeah, Tay, yeah, Errol
Tayshawn Wiggins
Matthews,
went.
Tay, Sean Wiggins
Okay.
went. Yeah,
So I'm just gonna pull up real quick, just because I think this is a conversation that has to be had, right? So in CS7, Vinny Ball and Jack Sky were clearly the two best DBs, right? Jack
outside
Sky had
of who Princeton Butler, but he didn't come
yes,
back.
but
But
correct,
we're not going to
correct.
talk about him because he's not in the draft.
Well, but you just did talk about him, so
True. Yeah, that is fair.
so Jack Sky 16 interceptions, Vinny Ball 10 interceptions. That's kind of unheard of, right? Jack Sky
Yeah,
16 is unheard of, but also Vinny Ball getting 10 is kind of unheard of.
and
So,
5 pick sixes.
and then right, yeah, 5 of them went to the house. And then if you look at so you said it. Vinny Ball in CS7 arguably DB of the year. But then this year, if you look at Brandon Cherry, 7 interceptions, led the nation in terms of the cornerback position. How are these guys still on the board when everyone else on this list, with the exception of Ethan Nation, is gone?
Yeah,
Like
it could be a fit thing. It could be a fit of what Smitty sees there with the users. Maybe this is a team that needed a user player there. This was a player because this comes back from the whole user generic thing.
right,
And there's a lot of user cornerbacks. I still think I don't blame some of those guys going to where they went. I just still think. I think Elijah Carter's going to be fine. He has the reloads and he could end up as an 80 overall. I just think like the Sentinels are in a spot where they have to rebuild and they need to get the guys now. They need to get the guys now. And when you have Brian Robinson still on the board, like I don't know, it just didn't make very much sense to me. And yeah, Brandon Cherry and Vinny Ball, it's just they kind of cancel each other out because Vinny Ball, his CS8 wasn't all that great.
sure,
It was all right. And even Brandon Cherry, his CS7 was very pedestrian. I mean, he didn't have a single pick in CS7. No one knew who Brandon Cherry was. Everyone knew who Vinny Ball was, but no one knew who
right.
Brandon Cherry was until this a year. So it kind of adds into the whole, what have they done for and these guys were, hey, I took over CS7, you took over CS8. So I think that's probably what it was, where like some of these guys are just consistent, and they also got the reloads to help themselves, versus where these guys are straight up generic players. These guys are straight up generic players. They have to be put into the weekly game plan system and just based off their play, just hope that they get enough upgrades throughout the year. So that's why I think they are still on the board.
Yeah, the benefit of being a generic is that the coach, if you go to a user team, has the ability to upgrade that player, right? Like for those of you that aren't aware of how it works for us, um, user GMs in the league, we have the ability to um, buy into a higher Patreon level, and we get the ability to upgrade individual players, um, basically similar to if you were using your Relo bucks. However, coaches can only do that for generic players. So
Right.
it's not uncommon to see generic players be selected high, like early on, especially to a user coach
A user
team,
coach.
because they want the ability to Patreon that player and upgrade that player. So that's
I
not
mean, we
uncommon.
just saw what Miles Brock was for the Dreadnoughts last
Correct.
year.
Great. Perfect
So
example. Perfect example. Miles Brock was what, an 82 or 80? Oh,
he
no, I'm
was like a
sorry. It was a
77
70.
he was like a 77, 76, and now he's at 85,
Right.
86 overall. So
Within 1 year. And it's
yeah,
because he got drafted. He was a generic. Frankie decided to, I believe Frankie Patreoned him, but
he
also he
Patreoned
started
him
him right
and the
away.
week and the
And
weekly game plan stuff.
right.
Yeah.
You Patreon the guy, he upgrades quicker. You start him right away, he earns XP quicker. You focus player him, he gets XP quicker. There's a lot of things that can go into it, and you can't always do that with a user player. So listen, Vinny Ball and Brandon Cherry are going to make somebody very happy, even if they are only a 71 overall, right? Because we saw some of these other DBs. You mentioned the Tayshawn Wiggins and the Errol Matthews. Even if those guys are ahead of Brandon Cherry and Vinny Ball, I would love to have Brandon Cherry or Vinny Ball on my team if they're a 71 overall that I can Patreon and get to a high 70s their second year in the league.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to talk about BPA going into tomorrow, I think Brandon Cherry and Vinny Ball are both high on that list of best players available for tomorrow's round two.
I don't see them getting past at least round two, pick 15. I think both are gone by that point. And then
Yeah,
at that point, what do you do at the cornerback spot? Because then now with the whole Tigers case, it's like, I love Steve. Steve is my guy, but you can make a case there that, with the 32nd best passing defense in the league, you just missed out on a great quality cornerback there because cornerbacks are going to be very slim by the time that they get to their third round pick. But I will say with the Sentinels, maybe it's just I still think that it was a miss. Now, Elijah Carter, we know he's a guy that likes to carry a chip on his shoulder. He likes to talk a lot, and obviously, he may have interviewed very well with the Sen with Rowan, Dan, and Tor. I don't know who did the interviews there, you know. But also, you brought up the whole cornerback thing, where I think everybody, there was the argument with Dylan Lewis and Jaden Young, and the Diablos ended up going to go get Colorado Rivers instead, when Jaden Young is there. Now, that also just tells us with the Steamers, Reed Wagner's days are numbered, you know, but could it also be a culture fit thing? I've seen rumblings around that some people have not been the biggest fan of Jaden Young, and the way that he talks to people, same with KC. But KC also had a great interview that we just saw him pretty much clearly
he
get
did.
himself into the first round, like, which no one saw like coming. I did not see that coming. So it really depends on your interviews. I mean, obviously, I trust that Justin Jones had an interview with Jaden Young, but I think sometimes it really just depends. Just like you said, you had your talks with Miles, and they went great. And obviously, the Cougars felt like Dylan Lewis was his guy. Um, the Diablos felt like Colorado Rivers was his guy, and now the Steamers feel like, hey, we have our guy to replace Reed. And you look at the overalls, I don't think you can like take anything away from Jaden Young and say that I mean, he's obviously the second best cornerback in this class.
So I want to go back to something that's in the chat right here because there's a lot of people talking about. We're going to go back to the Sentinels and the Elijah Carter pick because it's a hot topic and clearly a lot of people are talking about it. If you follow along in the chat here, and one thing that I see, and I thought about this, this was part of the reason why I actually had Elijah Carter lower on my list. If we go and we look at your list of corners, I think you had Elijah Carter at 4 or 5. You had him above Vinny Ball and Brandon Cherry. I actually probably was sliding him a little bit further down, and it was really based on something that he literally just said in the chat here. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. I was the biggest CB in the draft.
That's
And
a safety
I
playing cornerback.
correct. So I'm wondering, Elijah, are you saying this because you're trying to justify the fact that you were taken 10th overall? Because I don't think I don't think it worked out the way that you wanted it to. Nobody wants a 6'3", 225-pound corner. Like we don't. That's not a corner. That's a safety. And unless you absolutely desperately need a safety, you're
And they already
um,
have two with Eric Hogan
right.
and who is the other guy? Like they already have two safeties there. So you're not playing that.
So it'll be interesting. Like I'm
Unless Eric
curious to
Hogan
see.
still wants out. So because Eric was asking for a trade. So
I'm curious to see what the attributes look like because I understand what they were in college, and I think Elijah Carter had like 95 speed in college. I'm willing to bet that you're going to have like 91 speed at best in the
it's
RFL.
gonna
Like
go down. Yeah.
at 6'3", 225 pounds, you're not going to have 95 speed. I'm sorry. Like you're no corner at 225 pounds is going to have 95 speed. So, I a lot of times people don't know what they don't know, right, Pecan? And we have the benefit of knowing because we've been around a little bit longer. But guys don't realize that what your attributes are in college is not what your attributes are going to be in the RFL. Just
It
because you
depends
were
on how you play
95
and how you
speed,
built your player.
right? And a lot of times what you just said at the end, the latter part of that statement is the most important. It depends on how you build your player. If you build a 6'3", 225-pound corner, he's not going to have 95 or 96 speed. Like that's
No.
just not going to happen, right? Like so I think the Sentinels are in a little bit of a sticky situation here. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't want to spend too much more time on them, but I think that's,
Yeah.
where a lot of people are questioning the pick. I think if I were to ask you, Pecan, what was your biggest surprise pick of the first round? I think we both agree it's probably
I mean,
Elijah
it's
Carter at
100%.
10.
It's Elijah at 10, but I also think you can make a case for who the Aviators took at 24,
So let's go
which
there
we'll get
because
to. Yeah,
and we can just go right there because I agree with you 100%. I said this when it happened, and I said this after the fact. I don't get it. There's no justification. There's no world that I want to live in. And listen, I was the one. I was watching the combine, and I was pounding the table for Casey Robinson. I actually said in a VC with other coaches, I'm in the market for a backup quarterback. And in the third or fourth round, I might take Casey Robinson because that was a hell of a combine and that was a hell of an interview. And he
Interview was
sounded
great.
really good. The interview was fantastic. Casey Robinson, we love you. We absolutely love you. Your interview was fantastic. Everybody who wants to be a prospect in the RFL, go back and watch the combine video and listen to Casey Robinson's interview. It was one of the best interviews I've ever heard. However, that doesn't take him from a third round quarterback to a
To a
first round
first
quarterback.
round.
And ultimately, what happened here, and you'll never convince me otherwise, what happened here was the Aviators needed a quarterback, and so they took a quarterback. And the reality is, maybe they couldn't have gotten Casey Robinson in the second round, but maybe they could have. And even if they couldn't, there might be another quarterback that isn't going to be that far apart. Or you could have just waited and gone through the season because let's be honest, the Aviators are not contenders. So you could have just waited. You could have seen how the year went. And maybe instead of picking 14, I'm sorry, instead of picking 24th or 22nd in the draft, you probably would have been picking in the top 10. And then you could have gotten the quarterback and probably been the best quarterback, whether that's a Maivia at LSU, right? Like there's
Dante
other,
Taylor, Devin Norton, one of those guys for next year. Right.
right. Like, I'm sorry, but I would rather one of those guys than than and again, I don't want to say this out loud because it sounds different than what it really is. Casey Robinson, listen, I wanted you. I really did. I wanted to take you. I wanted to take you in the third or fourth round, and I wanted to take you because I was going to have you as a backup. But clearly, you're not going to be a backup. I just worry about how successful you're going to be on a franchise that I think they just have
That is
other
going to go through
holes.
some growing pains for sure when you look at the roster. Like, and I think KC, I mean, this is not to offend Florida,
Yeah,
but if there's anybody that can withstand of what Florida just went through the last 2 years of going 7-6 for 2 years in a row, maybe a guy that can handle the losing side, could be KC. I think with this pick, after seeing, because obviously everyone thought they are whoever that they didn't get from whoever was that third cornerback out of the first two teams that we knew were going cornerback, they were going to take that guy. Okay, well, the Steamers just took who we all thought was going to go to the Aviators there at 24.
right.
Um, I feel like that could have been. Oh, all right. Listen, there's KC, C.J. Johnson, Danny Johnson, Corey Baines, all of these guys who I think are going to go in tomorrow's rounds. Um, they could have gotten them there. They could have gotten the guy because what, they have the 54th pick, the 22nd pick of the second round, and they could have just probably gone there, now. Like, I think the Steamers would have taken that cornerback. And obviously there's talk about the Armadillos taking him at 2.4, which would have been the most rolling move like ever. Um, but like, this is a good spot for him. I just think, like, I still think the Aviators could have maybe attacked their edge position here. Because I still think they have a big glaring hole there at edge. Um, and they just maybe passed up the chance to getting someone like a Russell Shackelford or Randy Wilson, or Cena Anoy, who I think are three great edge rushers that are still in this draft who are definitely going to go tomorrow. Um, because they have to fill that up, and they could have gotten that cornerback there, whether that was going to be Baines, whether, and maybe it could have been KC. Now, I do agree that KC, he interviewed very well, that he probably wasn't going to be there at the Aviators pick, But what's wrong with someone like Corey Baines or CJ Johnson? They're.
Or just
I don't
waiting.
think.
Again, just
Yeah,
wait. Get a Devin Norton next year because if at that point, if you don't take a QB, then you're probably not going to do that well this year, and you're going to have a high draft pick next year. And if we think that Devin Norton is the guy next year, well, guess what? You get you get that guy next year.
and you
And
already
what's
have a
the
team that's
difference?
built ready for a quarterback to come in.
Correct. And honestly, I mark my words, Devin Norton, Sulamaya, they're probably going to come into next year's draft around the same overall that Casey Robinson is going to get to by the end of this year, right? At a 69 overall, he's going to get to a 73. He's going to get to maybe a 74. And I think you could make the argument that a guy like Devin Norton, that's what they come in at next year anyway. So,
Or Dante Taylor or Jonathan
right.
Wilson from Georgia. If Baylor Kennedy has a great year at Clemson, I feel like with the
I
team
don't
that
like
the
that transfer, by
Aviators
the
have,
way. That's a whole
I
nother
don't either, and
conversation.
we'll
It's a
talk
whole
about
nother
that some other
conversation.
day. I do
But
agree with you there.
Baylor Kennedy, if you're listening right now, you made the worst decision you could have possibly made by transferring from USC. USC is a juggernaut for the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, and the middle linebacker position. Those are the three best positions you could possibly be at USC. And you were the quarterback, and you had guys transferring to USC, and you
Gabe
transferred away.
Schumacher's coming back. Yeah, so we'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, but no, the Aviators, you are right. This could have been a draft where the Aviators, hey, all right, Jaden Young was not there for us at 24 because he went to the Steamers. Let's just get guys to build this team because there's clearly some holes on this team that they need to fill. I mean, this roster is in bad shape. But I'm excited to see what KC can do. I just hope that he's ready and knows that this is going to be a tough rebuilding year.
All right. Let's see. Let's take a quick peek at the chat. Who is Cam Dog? Is that Cam Perk? Is that
That is
Perkin?
perk. Yeah, that is perk.
All right. He confuses me because his Discord name is like different from the YouTube name.
Do we want to talk about your picks? We haven't talked about your picks at all.
We can talk about my picks. I mean, I don't, so here's what I will say before we get into my picks. I want to say this. Every single year, if you were a user GM, our goal is to try and get guys that are 75 overall, 76 overall. If you can get a guy that's a 75, 76 overall with star dev, I don't think let me just throw this out there, guys. Nobody will ever come into the RFL with superstar dev. The best case
Yeah, I saw
scenario,
that in the chat. I was like, guys, you don't know. No one comes into the
no.
draft with superstar.
No. So this is where like a lot of times people need a little bit of an education, and it's not insulting. I'm not, trying to make anybody feel bad or insult anyone. I'm just telling you, nobody will ever come into the RFL. It's not like your normal offline Madden franchise where you can get a guy in the third round and he comes in with hidden dev and he's got superstar. That will never happen in the
Yeah,
RFL. The best case scenario is you will have star dev, and then if you perform well, you can get to superstar dev. Not everybody loves it. It is what it is. So the idea that you can get a guy who's a 75 overall, 76 overall, and have star dev, that's like the best case scenario because also we don't typically have guys that are 80 overall, 81 overall. I think in the last 3 draft classes, we've
I don't
had
think we had an
probably,
80 overall last year in the last draft. I don't think we did. I think with
I
Brock
don't either.
Frederick, he was the number one pick, and he was only a 79 or a 78, I think.
And Tyler Cage was the year before, he was an 81.
And he was at 81, yeah. And
Do
then
you remember
Peyton
what
J.
Jacob Reed? You remember what Jacob
Kenyon
Reed
J was
was?
a 80 overall. I'm trying to remember what Jacob Reed was. That was the first draft I ever saw.
It's not either way. The reality of the situation is it's not common and it's
Yeah,
not going to happen often where guys get anything above a 78. If you
he
are
was
a
a
78,
79.
Jacob Reed was. Okay, Jacob Reed was without question the best linebacker in college. And he came in at a 79, right? And Tyler Cage was a little bit of a unicorn. And he was an 81. But at 81, I think a lot of us were also shocked that he was that high because you don't get 80 overalls as a rookie in the RFL. It doesn't happen. I say all that to say this. The goal is to find a guy that's a 75 or 76 overall. And if you get one of those and they have star dev and that's all you get in the first round, or that's all you get in the draft at all, you consider that a win. So the Cougars have 3 draft picks in the top 10. And Wyatt Harris, 1 overall, 81. Again, you don't get 81s in the RFL as a rookie. Wyatt Harris, congratulations, Chicago Cougars. 81 star dev on the defensive line. Then you go and you get Jack Sky. Again, love the pick, hate the pick, have questions about the pick, whatever you want. At the end
Of
of the
the
day,
overall talent.
you got a 78 overall, which does, again, is very rare. It is very rare to be a 78 overall. And so, Jack Sky, if you're watching this and you're bummed and you're like, oh man, I'm only a 78, shut up, dude. It doesn't happen. Got one of the highest you got one of the highest grades any DB has ever got in the RFL as a rookie. Do not be upset. Do not be bummed. Okay. And then the Cougars turn around at 9 and they get Dylan Lewis at 77. And 77 is also a grade that is not that common. The idea that we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys, the top 9 guys, all of them were 77 or above. Pecan, I challenge you to go back. And
I'm looking.
if I asked you to tell me, go to last year's draft class and tell me how many players in total were 77 overall or higher. I don't think there's 9 of them total. And we saw 9 of them,
77 overall higher.
and we saw the first 9 picks were 77 or higher. I really don't think last year's class had 5 in the whole class.
Oh, wait. In the whole class? Oh, that's just the first round. The whole class?
After the first round, you're probably not getting any. 77
There
or
was
higher.
there's 2 now that I just saw, and I think that's going to be it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so 7.
7 guys in the
Only 5 in the
entire
first round.
draft class last year were taken at 77 or higher. 5 of those guys were in the first round. We saw the first 9 picks in this draft were 77 or higher. And then we also saw Diamond Armani was a 79. He went 13th overall. Caesar Davis went 12th overall. Bo Sanders went 18th overall. Arturo Flores, Charlie Dotson, we saw more guys go in the first round at 77 overall than we probably saw in the last 2 years go in the first round. So for those of you that are like, oh, my overall is not as high as I wanted it to be, it's exactly where it should be. It's exactly where we all thought it was going to be. All right. And then
Well,
if we
I think
want to
of
get
what
into,
helps. I think of what helps is that, versus the season 9 draft versus this draft and the season 8 draft is that with the season 8 draft, the majority of those players had 2 years of tape on them.
right.
The guys in the season 9 draft, that was a bit of a unicorn draft where the majority of those guys only had 1 year tape on them. So it was a bit of a unicorn draft where those guys really only had 1 year of tape that we could really watch, you know, but it's just insane because just like you said, I mean, Jordan Granger was the best cornerback in last year's draft, and he was a 73. And we
Mhm.
now see three cornerbacks who have a better overall than him. So but it's really important, and this is why I keep telling guys this. Like, yes, there was a longevity thing here, but these are guys who played at a top level year after year after year. These weren't guys who just played average for 4 years and were granted that. No, these were guys who were clearly the best at their position for the last 3 years after the last draft. So that's because there's a certain player who kept saying, "Well, I'm staying all 4 years so I could be the highest overall cornerback." That's not how it works. Like, that's
No,
not how it works.
not how it's going to work. But I say all that, and the reason why I brought all that up is because what the Chicago Cougars were able to do tonight, I don't think we'll ever get the amount of flowers that it deserves. I don't think that we will ever, you know, properly articulate or appreciate what this draft class meant to the Chicago Cougars organization. Now, is it easy to do that when you have three top 10 picks? Okay, well, maybe it's a little bit easier, but it's
But
not
you
easy.
can also
It's not
miss.
easy.
You could have
Correct.
missed on all of them.
Correct. It's not easy. I will tell you, as a user GM, it is not easy to hit on every single pick because we don't know what these guys are going to be based on their overall. We don't know what their their attributes are going to be. We are just going based off of the tape that we watched, the college series, whatever we might know about their attributes that they had in college, their stats, like that's all that we have to go on. And sometimes it doesn't matter because I can look at stats and Pecan can look at stats, and ultimately the stats don't matter, right? Like a guy that had worse stats could be a higher overall. So I don't want people to forget how impactful, how impressive, and how game changing and culture changing this draft class could ultimately be for the Chicago Cougars. I do not envision the Chicago Cougars picking in the top 10 anytime soon.
I agree with that.
I,
Of
I
what
just
they
don't.
just got. Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't. And if they do and they are picking in the top 10, it's next year. And that's it. Because after next year, with the talent that they have, either if they're picking in the top 10 2 years from now, Rob Roby is fired. Like he's not the general manager anymore, right? Like you can't have that good of a draft and that much talent and end up picking in the top 10. And I that last part of what I said is in no way indicative of how I really feel about the Cougars draft. This draft was amazing for the Cougars. It's arguably the best individual team draft haul in I mean I guess I would say in a draft period, certainly in a round one. I mean, it's not common for teams to have three draft picks in the first round.
And I just want to say really
Obviously,
quick to Rodney's comment too. He's like, well, maybe trades happen. We are saying if he outright gets a top 10 pick 2 years in a row without trades. This is without trades. He could have top 10 picks, but that could be from trades. But still, man, I mean, he had a fantastic draft. I think they were big winners of this draft. I think Forbes getting Dior Gore and getting Colorado Rivers. How about that for Dior Gore? You got to play with Dylan Lewis, Jaden Young, and now you get to play with Colorado Rivers. So now you just played with the top three quarterbacks of this draft. Um, I think the Bisons won this draft, and I did see a kind of shout out to all of those guys. We're just gonna all of that's going to be talked about tomorrow, I'm sure, on the podcast for the draft. But you know, to me, I think you guys hitting on what your guys' picks were: Cody Nelson, Brian O'Connor, Chuck Bynum. I mean,
Yeah, we can
I
go
think
there.
you could
So
say the minors also, like, there was clear winners with these picks tonight, and to me, it was the miners, Diablos, 100% the Cougars, and the Bisons.
yeah, I mean the Bison's trade with the Diablos kind of made both of them winners, right? The Bison's being able to get Bo Sanders and then getting Ethan Marks
The
out of
guy that we
position
all
where
thought was going to go to them in the first place, that too.
right, right. Yeah, I think the Bisons are absolutely a winner. The Cougars, obviously, when you have 3 picks in the top 10, it's almost impossible to be anything other than a winner. The Diablos, when you get the best wide receiver, we could make an argument that Dior Gore is the best wide receiver, you know, in the last. Is he better than Devontae Sharkley? Is he better than
Or
Caleb
Caleb
Houston? Like
Houston, better than who was the number one guy in the season 7 draft? Was that Braun
Chris
or
Braun,
Melt?
Jake Winkelman. Like I think he's better than those guys. I think
Yeah,
the only guys that really, you know, is he better than Devontae Sharkley? I
he
think he
comes in
might
better
be.
than Jake Winkelman and Chris Braun. They both came in at
Right,
70 sevens.
right. So, but again, it's not all about what you came in as your overall. Like, let's see how they play. But I think that he has
Yeah,
the opportunity to immediately step in. Caleb Houston didn't step into that role of being like the guy. Um, Whereas I think Dior
and
Gore might.
Sharkley's still
Right,
trying to find his way too. Like, both of those
right,
guys are still trying to find their way there as the guy. Dior is coming into the Diablos as, like, you're the man, because
right.
I mean, Devontae Sharkley, they still had London Lions, I think, who was still there. Like, now he's old and he's done.
He's gone.
But I right. But now this is his chance. And with Caleb Houston, well, obviously you got Brian Rob um what's his name? It's escaping me, the receiver, number 8. Why is he not coming to me? S-
Sharkley? Where?
No, for the Explorers. Number 8.
Uh
What is his
oh,
name?
CJ Robinson?
Yeah, C.J. Robinson. I was kind of, yeah. So he was coming in there where obviously C.J. Robinson is the guy with Austin there, but Dior Gore is clearly coming in as the guy, and now with the Diablos, you got Colorado Rivers. So
Let's look at so I guess the next big well, all right, hold on. Let's pause. Let's go back because we didn't really talk about my picks and we're talking about the Cougars and having 3 picks, and we obviously also had
Diablos,
three
the
picks in the
Bisons.
draft. Um, being able to get Cody Nelson. So I will tell you this right now. Um, Cody Nelson was my number 1 offensive tackle on the board. Uh, and Chuck Bynum was my number 2 offensive tackle on the board. And they were very different players for me. If you were to DM Miles McCain right now, and you were to DM Killian Bain right now, both of those guys would tell you I was pounding the table that Chuck Bynum might be the better of the two. Um, I like the size better. I like some of the strength grades better. And the only thing that I didn't like better was the overall, I guess, production and stats. The fact that Cody Nelson played 2 seasons and he only gave up 4 sacks in 2 years. You guys got to
That's
remember,
pretty good.
offensive guards, if you give up 4 sacks, fine. But tackles give up way more sacks than guards. They always will. So if you have a guard that gives up 3 sacks and you have a tackle that gives up 3 sacks, that tackle is better than the guard. I like that's like it's not even really up for debate. It is extremely more difficult for a tackle to prevent sacks than it is for a guard. So when I look at a guy like Cody Nelson, who only gave up 4 sacks in 2 years, to me, he's on par with a guy like a Casey Chestnut and a Caesar Davis. Obviously, this is where you go back to when you're a user GM, you don't always hit on your draft pick. I I was shocked that Cody Nelson was only a 74 overall, and I'm okay with Casey Chestnut being a higher overall, but what I'm not okay with is there being 5 overall difference because Casey Chestnut gave up 3 sacks in 2 years. Cody Nelson gave up 4 sacks in 2 years. And Cody Nelson plays the more premium position. So, what am I missing to make this guy a 79 and this guy a 74? Right. And I don't need the answer to that question. It is what it is. But it just
And not
goes to
only
show
that,
you
he and
you
this
miss,
is no
you
offense
miss.
to Eric Al. There's no offense to Eric Alcorn, but he didn't really have a cornerback that would put up the passing yards like a Jaden Young does. Like there is a
Oh,
difference there. Like only giving up that many sacks as a offensive tackle, he gave up the least amount of sacks between all the offensive tackles who played 2 years. That's why I had him as my number one. I was very shocked to see him come in as a 74. I can understand why Chuck Bynum, because yes, he has, better height and weight. Obviously the Alabama passing numbers are insane with what they had.
But the Utah rushing numbers, like let's talk about, what would Utah's running game be if they didn't have a guy like Cody Nelson, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm extremely happy. Do I wish that Cody Nelson was a little bit higher? Of course I
And
do.
Andre
Like
Reed did,
everybody
I
does.
mean, and Vince Reed did run to the outside a lot. You go and watch a lot of Utah games. It wasn't up the middle with Utah.
Right.
It was a lot of stretch run plays.
Yeah. So for us, if I'm talking about my picks, like I'm thrilled. Obviously, we're talking about the offensive line. I traded away. I got Piku McCullough from the Diablos, and I traded away, what you might consider my best young offensive lineman in Nasir Red. So clearly, I wanted to address the offensive line position. You and I joked about this offline, weeks ago. I think you had like mocked me taking like 5 offensive linemen in the first 9 picks that I
I think
had,
I
and
did. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, dude, like I get that I'm going to take offensive linemen, like it's no surprise, but am I going to take 5 offensive linemen in the first 3 rounds? Like, what are you doing? But I was going to take at minimum 2 offensive linemen in this draft class, and it was just a matter of when I took them. It just so happened that I got who I thought were the 2 best, and I got them both when I did. Now, if you flip to the last pick that I made, and we'll pull this back up, right? So you can see I took Cody Nelson at 16 overall. He was a 74 with Star Dev. And then with the 26th pick, went and took, well, so, okay, at 28 is when I took Chuck Bynum,
Chuck Bonham.
76
Yeah.
overall. At 26, this one right here was just like one of those picks where I, I, I felt like maybe everybody just kind of fell asleep, or maybe like everybody's Wi-Fi went out, and I was the only one participating in the draft for like 20 minutes because I didn't understand how Brian O'Connor could be on the board at 26 overall. Because for me, we talked about the tiers, right? And you talk about, Dylan Lewis and Jaden Young being tier 1, and then Colorado Rivers being in a tier by himself, and then everybody else. Well, for me, Brian O'Connor was in a tier 1 by himself,
By
and then
himself.
and then there almost was no tier 2, and everybody else was tier 3. Like I could not believe that he was available. And we talked about this. Go back to last year's draft class, Pecan. Tell me how many linebackers were taken in the top 25.
Oh gosh, last year was so heavy too.
I think there was like 6 linebackers taken in the top 25 because I had pick 14 and I wanted one and I didn't take one because I think 4 or 5 had already gone prior to my pick at 14
Six. There were six
in
linebackers.
in the top 25.
Yeah. And before your pick, there was four taken
4.
before you at
Okay.
14. Yeah.
So at 14 overall, I said I am not taking the fifth linebacker. That's ridiculous. I'm worried about the fifth linebacker being not that good, right? Because again, I don't know what they're going to look like. I don't know the overalls. And I don't want to take the fifth linebacker when I'm picking in the top 15. Like, that's ridiculous to me. However, I'll just wait 1 year and you tell me that I get linebacker number 1 at 26? Make it make sense, Pecan. Make it
That's
make
insane. I
sense.
honestly did not see Brian O'Connor. I mean, that's my guy. I didn't see him falling all the way to the 26, which is funny because I think I had him in mocks. You taking Mike linebacker because we all saw Brent Rattay's like 35 years old. The other guy's like 32.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those things where it's like, this is obviously outside the offensive line position. This is a big need for the miners going forward. So we all kind of thought like, because I think I had him in my last mock. Where did I have you, miners? Well, I at least
I
had
think you had
him.
Hallie Jacqueline. I think you had me mock taking Hallie Jacqueline.
Yeah, because I thought the Barons would have taken, Brian O'Connor at that point, and that's why I wouldn't have been surprised, with the news of with the Diablos going to 2, getting, Dior Gore that, and I was seeing a bunch of people's mocks saying Brian O'Connor at 3 to the Barons. And I was like, well, I do think the
Yeah.
Barons need a mic. I wouldn't be shocked if Brian goes there at 3 to the Barons. So I think that is a big win for the Miners there. And you just got the, you know, because I agree, and I've had that in my rankings for a while that, until Brian O'Connor, because he was honestly, he might have stayed, if I didn't
He
talk him
did.
into going into the draft. And I was telling him, I'm like, bro, you are literally the best middle linebacker in this class if you do declare. And I think it's going to show. I still don't know what Hallie Jacqueline's overall is going to be, so we'll have to see of what that is going to be. But I think it's fair to say that Hallie Jacqueline, he's been a great player, but we've never seen him impact the field quite like Brian O'Connor has the last 3 years. So to get him at 26 to me is probably the biggest steal of this draft.
I will say, and shout out to Hodge. I appreciate the comment here. The most interesting draft recap I ever seen.
If you want us to go
We,
down and talk about like every single 32 picks, go watch the first round of the RFL draft.
yeah, just go back. Like, it's worth it. But so I do want to talk about Brian O'Connor because you brought up a good point in the whole he wasn't going to declare. I am looking at my DMs with Brian O'Connor right now. I'm not going to share them on the screen because
Right.
I don't want to. But on October 25th on October 25th at 11:29 a.m., I said to Brian O'Connor, FYI, the Declaration channel opens at noon today. Not sure if you have decided what you're going to do, but just a heads up. He writes back an hour and 10 minutes later. He wrote back, I'm staying another season. That's it. I'm staying another season. My response, one word, bummer. I wrote bummer. I was pissed. I was like,
Yeah.
bummer. And then I was like, I get it though. And he goes, I want to see my full potential and want to keep helping my team succeed one more year. I get it. And Pecan, you can appreciate it. You were his coach. And then something changed. And whether it was, the little conversation that I had with him, or whatever conversations you had with him, or whatever conversations he may have had outside on November 5th. So from October 25th to November 5th, on November 5th, he changed his mind and he declared. And I messaged him immediately and I said, what made you change your mind? And he said, just thinking it was the best decision for me, which I assume, Pecan, if you were to go to your DMs with Brian O'Connor somewhere on November 5th, you probably had a conversation with him somewhere along the lines of, you're the best linebacker in this class. Why don't you just go pro?
Yeah.
And ultimately, Brian O'Connor, if you're still there, if you're watching, I hope you now realize and appreciate that I wasn't just blowing smoke up your ass here. Like, I legitimately had you as I think I said, listen, I don't think I'm going to get you. I picked 26th. There's no way you're going to be available at 26, but in a hypothetical world, if you're there at 26, you will not be available at 27 because I will take you. And it worked out. I called him. He was happy. We got him in the locker room immediately. The guys in the locker room are super happy. Yeah, I was shocked that Brian O'Connor was available at 26.
I think it's 100% the biggest deal because it's honestly a pick that he could have fallen to the Bears there. But this is one of those drafts where it's like middle linebacker talent, we've seen 2 drafts in a row. I mean, even in the season 8 draft, there was like what, like 6 or 7 linebackers that went in that first round, and then we saw this last one. So like middle linebacker talent is starting to become like that's starting to become now the like loaded spot where it's like we may have to tell guys, hey, stop making mics because we already have so many user mics now. Like teams are already loaded there. But Brian O'Connor was clearly someone like, hey, like if there's a Mike linebacker to take in this first round out of anybody, it was Brian. And and I've always been that coach where of course, I want to see, this Shield doing well and win. You know, like
Right.
I want to see us win. But my whole goal is not only do I want us to win, but I want guys to go when I do think they have reached their full potential. If I think that in 2 years you've been a baller and yeah, we may not have won anything. Guess what? I talk to people and I hear things, and everyone is saying that you're a first round talent, and even I see it. I would rather you go and maximize your potential because to me, all of the awards, the national championships, college, it comes and goes. We get new players every single year, and we are going to be fine. This is your career, and I want him to maximize his full potential being in the pros. And obviously, I mean, man, I'm so excited for him to see what he's going to do for y'all. So,
Yeah, I don't know if there's a scenario where he could have gone back and then entered next year and ended up in any better situation. I mean, okay, if you go back to Ohio State and you win the national title, that's great. But I mean, as a 76 overall, going to a team that, listen, I'm just going to tell you, Brian, like you're going to get reps immediately as a starter. So, and for a defense like we've had in the last 3 years where, I think we're constantly in the top 5, and if not top 5, top 7 in terms of team defense. I'm super stoked. I know the guys in the locker room are stoked. Pecan, obviously, you're excited because he's your boy. Let's look at the tight end position here real quick because I'm not surprised that Arturo Flores and Charlie Dotson went in the first round. But I think maybe I'm a little surprised that they went back to back.
yeah, that
Um,
one kind of shocked me. I wasn't expecting the Barons to draft a tight end there at 23. I'm going to be honest. Um, because I thought the Barons had somebody else at that spot.
I also think more than anything, there's a lot of teams out there that are probably going to be a little disappointed. Like I think there were some teams that I was looking through that, kind of I don't know if they necessarily needed a tight end, but you could envision a scenario where they drafted a tight end.
Right.
One of the teams that pops into my head is the Marshalls, right? Like I remember when I was looking at the Marshalls and I was looking at their roster,
Tying in
um,
is a need for
I,
them. Yeah.
I thought, and then I also kind of started thinking, well, with
The
Hodge
Dreadnoughts.
and the Miami connection, Hodge has that Miami connection. Like, would
Yep.
he? he would, would he love to have a Charlie Dotson? Like, could have Charlie Dotson have fallen to the second round? I thought that that was a possibility. I didn't think Arturo Flores was going to fall to the second round. I did think that Charlie Dotson might go like early second round. Like that's kind of, that's kind of where we see a lot of the good tight ends go is like early round two. So I thought it was a little interesting to see Charlie Dotson go immediately after Arturo Flores. That being said, both of these guys are going to be huge, impactful players for their teams. Flores with the Aviators and Dotson with the Barons. Like both of these guys are standout. I saw you had your poll, about a month ago or several weeks ago. Which tight end? Who do you think is tight end number one? And a lot of people were laughing because they clearly thought Arturo Flores was number one. But I mean,
Charlie
Charlie
Dotson
Dotson,
actually
Charlie
won that
Dotson
poll.
is really there. Like he's that dude also,
I
so
agree. I agree. I just think, of course, this is me being the Ohio State guy. I feel like when you watch the tape, it's just funny because even if you go look at the stats, like Arturo's and Charlie Dodson stats, it's pretty funny because like Arturo stats is like literally just like a bit better. And then there is the CS7 where Charlie Dodson CS7. That wasn't his fault. Tennessee and CS7 just stopped throwing him the ball. They
sure.
literally just stopped throwing him the ball, so that's why Arturo ended up getting the big lead on him. He had a small lead, but then it turned into a big lead. But CS8 was a return to form for Charlie Dodd Dodson there. I just wasn't expecting him to go to the Barons. Now I could kind of see why because Patrick Bain, he's 33 years old. And William Gallmore, he's a star dev, 27 years old, 78 overall. So like I wasn't expecting them to go tight, and that's just me. I don't know, unless Patrick Bain's on a contract. Oh, he is. So yeah, so they okay, so yeah, so he's on a contract year. So yeah, they got their tie, and then I just thought this was somewhere else that the Barons could have gone, like that they could have maybe at 23, taking Brian O'Connor there after you just took Nick O'Quinn, but they run a 3-4. Dodge is 30 years old, a 79 overall. You could have had a Nolan Carroll and Brian O'Connor thing there. That's why I think like I'm not mad at that pick. I just think that they could have done something there. I think Arturo Flores was obviously a clear first round talent. I think Charlie
Yeah.
Dodson to me was like a late
Yeah, it was
first,
fringe.
early
He was
second.
fringe. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely feel for the teams like the Marshalls, and I think the other team who I had him going in my mock was the Dreadnoughts. I think the Dreadnoughts desperately need a tight end, and you know, they now they got to either settle maybe for Brian Schneider, Mac Van Ginkel, one of those guys who's definitely going to go tomorrow
You almost
in those
wonder.
rounds.
You bring up the Dreadnoughts, and you almost wonder. They made the trade. They're right. They traded Dylan Schwartz. They get into the first round. At the last hour,
And they
basically
traded
this
a
week.
linebacker away too.
So you almost wonder: were they hoping? Like it'd be an interesting question to ask Frankie with that 25th pick, what was your best case scenario? Who was your number one guy there at 25? And to your point, if they were going to go tight end, were they hoping that Arturo Flores was there at 25 or Charlie Dotson was there at 25? And then they weren't. So they had to pivot. And, let's then take a look at the Dreadnoughts. And at 25, they ended up going with JoJo Carter. I don't hate the JoJo Carter pick. I'm going to
I
be
don't
honest
need
with
it
you.
either because obviously you look at their ages of the cornerbacks. That was a big need.
Yeah. I like the JoJo Carter pick. I don't need a corner. However, I had conversations about with one of my second round picks because I picked 10th and 11th tomorrow. I was like, yeah, if JoJo Carter's there at 10 at 210 or 211, I might take him. He's an active guy, he's a good community guy. I'm not too worried about the 71 overall if he's my third DB and he has reloads to upgrade. Like I can make him better. He can get better on his own. I'm not too worried about it. So I don't hate the picks there for the Dreadnoughts. Obviously, Frankie was, maybe hoping he would be a little bit higher overall immediately, and he wouldn't have to rely on the reloads to get him up there. But it is interesting, like you mentioned, would the Dreadnoughts have taken a tight end? They don't really have one because you brought up Brian Schneider and Mac Van Ginkel. Well, those guys are not round one caliber.
Those aren't Charlie Dotson, Arturo
Correct.
Flores type of tight
Correct.
ends where these are going to be guys. Now, do I think they have the potential to? Yes, but when you're drafting and you make a trade like that, you make a trade to get a player right now to make the impact right now.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think they could have gone that because yeah, I understand they have Peter Vaz, but Peter Vaz is a user that said bye bye to the league to a while. He's a normal dev and he's not going to get any better. And you could have had maybe, one of the best tight ends there. Maybe they were planning on maybe Charlie Dodson be in there because I had him mocked going there in the second round to the Dreadnoughts. But I don't think getting JoJo Carter is bad at all. Do they still have the second round pick? I think they do at 48. I think they still have that pick. So
Who are the
I
Dreadnoughts?
mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure they
Uh,
do.
yeah, they picked 16th overall in round two,
So
48
yeah, so
overall.
you got him there, and then with him and yeah,
And listen,
cornerback. So
at 216, if they really did want to go tight end at 216, they could get a Mac Van Ginkel or a Brian Schneider. If they ultimately, were hoping that Flores or Dotson would fall to them at 25, and that didn't happen. If they wanted to go tight end, they could go that route. I think Schneider and Van Ginkel are both options at 216.
yeah,
Certainly one of them is. I don't think both of those guys are going to go in the first 15 picks tomorrow.
because this is and when you look at the majority of the RFL teams, a lot of RFL teams kind of already have their tight ends set right now, except for
Yeah.
the two teams that just took their picks. And obviously the Dreadnoughts being one of those like picks. And that's the unfortunate part. This is just one of those drafts where tight end is not the biggest need for this type of draft.
Right. All right. Let's take a quick peek at the back half. The last few picks here. We'll pull this up. Tayshaun Wiggins goes 27 to the Explorers. Obviously, we talked about me taking Chuck Bynum out of Alabama. Trevin Simpson, the wide receiver from Clemson. And then you got Trent Zimmer out
Trent
of Miami.
Zimmer to the Snowhawks, yeah.
And then Tyrese Evans and Rondell Smith. I guess here's where I want to have a conversation. Tyrese Evans and Rondell Smith, this was very educational, I think, because one thing that we didn't see a lot of in the first round was edge rushing linebackers or just general edge rushers, period. Typically, you get 6 or 7 edge rushers. Like the defensive end, the edge rusher position is highly sought after. And you
Very.
normally see a lot of those guys go. We saw Ethan Marks and we saw
Manny Rojas.
Manny Rojas, and those were the true prototypical defensive ends, right? But after that, we didn't see anybody. We saw
No.
Nick O'Quinn, but again, that's more like the Killian Bain type, right?
And
He's
not
the
only that, none of these guys had years that Nick O'Quinn had.
correct.
There's like a clear difference where it's like, okay, but Nick O'Quinn just had 35 and a half sacks in his first ever year and just put up 20 more sacks. Like there was like a difference.
Yeah, for sure. What's going to be interesting is I want to see what Nick O'Quinn's attributes look like? Because I believe in college he was only an 80 overall.
Yeah.
And he was an 80 overall who had like 95s in several categories. And now he's in the RFL as an 80 or as a 70, what, 76
Eight,
overall? 78
78.
overall. So
Yeah.
he's only 2 overall difference. And if he had like I want to pull it up almost. Let me see if I can find it real quick here. Where was he? Let's get rid of this filter. Remove that filter and let's just find Nick O'Quinn. Because it was wild to me. Like one of the knocks on him, and I don't know if maybe this was just me or maybe other people thought about this, but his overall in college was not that high.
It wasn't
And
at all.
and because of that, we all know that whatever your attribute is in college, that's as high as it's going to get. It can't possibly get any higher than that. Um,
I think
let's find.
like his biggest thing was like 99 finesse move or something like that. It was like crazy
Here
because
it
him
is.
as like a linebacker, he was like a 78 overall, which is what he played. But like when you go into the depth chart and you do like the rushing left end thing, rushing right end, his like overall was like way higher. It was insane.
So Nick O'Quinn's overall was an 80, right? In
Yeah.
college. And his overall now as a rookie in the RFL is 78. So he only went
You're
down
looking at the
2
two
overalls.
overalls. Yeah.
He only went down 2 overalls, which is insane to think about. But look at these attributes. He had 97 finesse move, 92 hit power, 90 pursuit, 87 awareness, 93 acceleration, and oh my God, 89 speed. So these attributes almost have to be close, right? Like,
Literally.
I mean, I
And
gotta
he's not a
think.
big guy too. Like he that 89 speed is very
I think the 80,
reasonable for his
I
speed.
think,
I mean,
I
for
think,
size.
I think, and again, NCAA attributes, I don't think are a direct correlation to Madden attributes, but I think Nick O'Quinn is going to your point. I agree with you. I think the speed is going to be his carrying attribute. I think he might have 88 or 89 speed. And then I don't think he's good. He might have 92 or 91 or maybe 93 XL. I don't think he's going to have 92 hit power. I don't think he's going to have 97 finesse moves.
No.
But if he doesn't, how far down can you possibly go to get him from an 80 to a
Just
78?
88, right.
Like you can't go that far. If you took away
No.
his finesse move and you took finesse move from a 97 to a 90, I think he's probably dropped below a 78. And clearly we know that he's a 78.
Right.
So I'm Nick O'Quinn for me is a unicorn. I can't I want to see what his attributes look like because I think Nick O'Quinn is going to be the first player in the history of the RFL to actually look almost identical
Identical.
to what they actually were built in college because you can't go that much lower. He was an 80 in college. He's a 78 as a rookie. So, I mean, is he going to have 94 finesse move? Is he going to have 90 hit power? Is he going to have 90 pursuit? Like, it's not common for rookies to have 90 anything other than maybe speed or strength or throw power. Like, we're talking about Nick O'Quinn, and he might have 3 individual 90s. And this is insane. Like, I don't know how I legitimately don't. I cannot wait for the player builds to come out because I have to see how Nick O'Quinn is built because it's basically identical to what he is here.
It's gonna be interesting to see how he lines up to against RFL offensive tackles now too, because I mean, of what he did was, I mean, he was doing like 35 sacks, 20 plus sacks against the best offensive lineman in the country, and it's insane what he was able to do with his own brawl. So I definitely think for like the Barons, like them getting Nick O'Quinn there at 3. I mean, they were like, all right, well, we didn't get Dior Gore, so let's go get Nick O'Quinn then. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
the other things that I want to ask about is how do you think the two user coaches who made their first picks, um, on how they did with their first picks with Bartman and Hodge?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at them because that's a good point. The
This was
Bulldogs
their
with Bartman, this was their first draft, and then also Hodge, who came in halfway through the year last year. Let's see. I love Hodges' pick. Him and I talked about this. I think that safety was his number one need. If you watched my team preview, I actually completely dropped the ball. And while I was talking about other positions, I never actually scrolled down further to get to the safety. And so I completely forgot that safety was such a need for him. So after I actually published the Marshalls draft preview, I messaged him and was like, dude, I'm sorry. I completely whiffed and forgot you definitely need a safety. And I didn't talk about
that was their
safety at all.
biggest need. Their biggest
100%.
need. When you look at their team, it was like the biggest point of need. It was just what safety was going to fall in there because I looked at the draft. Of course, I kind of thought. Maybe one of the safeties could have gone too. I thought Bartman and the Bulldogs were probably gonna go safety is what I was thinking, and I thought really to me that was the only other team that I could see like going there. But obviously he went to the Huskies, you know, because I had Nick O'Quinn going there first. Um, but do you think kind of with the Sentinels? Well, I think this was Rodan's first draft as well. So I think this was his first time drafting. So and we already had plenty to talk about that. Um, do you feel like this could have also been where maybe you take where they messed up and not getting Brian Robinson over Kenzo Yundo? But I still like the Kenzo Yundo pick though. I like
Where
that pick more than I do the Elijah Carter pick with the Bulldogs.
Oh, we're talking Bulldogs. Sorry, I thought we were talking about the Marshalls. I don't I don't have a problem with the Kenzo Udo pick. I liked I liked Kenzo. I will actually tell you that I have on my draft on my minors draft HQ, I have a tab that lists out the picks that I have and then the players that I'm willing to take with that pick. And I only had two players listed at the 116.
Yeah.
Now, again, and to be fair, I didn't list players that obviously I knew were going to be gone, but I listed, I don't even care anymore. Um, there were two players. Let's see if I can pull it up here. There were two players. If I can find this tab, we'll call it my little big board. There were two players that I would have taken. Um, And I don't even care. I'll just show it because I don't think I'm giving anything away here. No, I'm not going to do it because there is a little giveaway. At 116, I only had two names written on my board. One of them was Cody Nelson, who I took, and
Right.
the other one was Kenzo Udo. So everyone else was clearly I would have taken Dior Gore, and clearly I would have taken Manny Rojas and Ethan Marks and whatever if those guys were there. Those guys were never going to be available at 16. So in a realistic world, I only had two names on my list at 116, and Kenzo Udo was one of those names. So I cannot hate on uh, Bartman at all
No.
because the fact that you got Kenzo Udo, he has a lot of reloads. He's going to help himself. I think it'll be good for Bartman in that locker room to have, another user, try to build up your own culture in that
Got
locker room.
Brewer, Jermaine Taylor,
Yep.
Gaddy.
Love the
I
pick.
think,
Love the
yeah.
pick.
So I
Juan
think
Redden, Juan Redden, I don't have a problem with either. I think, if Hodge is being honest, he probably was hoping that Diamond Armani was going to fall.
right, which anybody who needs a safety would have hoped that that would have been the
Right.
case. But
Right.
I
I
think out
guess
of any safety, there was no way in my opinion, when I looked at the picks of who needed a safety, it was really the Bulldogs. And I think, did I mock a safety to the Huskies? I think I did. Yes, I did. I mocked them as safety in the second round. So really the two teams, the Huskies and the Bulldogs, were really the biggest safety needy teams. I think it's kind of like a false hope, hoping that Diamond Armani, but them getting one right in there at 20. I mean, at
yeah, I mean he even
reading that
says it
wrong.
right. He even says it
Yeah,
right here, right? Like I don't think any of us thought otherwise. And pleasantly surprising for me and possibly even for Hodge, I I didn't think that Redden was going to be that high. I thought that he was the number 2, but I was surprised to see that he was actually that high, right? Like a 76 overall. Again, a 76 overall in years past, that's like the best player at your position. So the fact that he came in at a 76 overall and he was the second one off the board, Diamond Armani, obviously you can see there, the 79 overall. 79 overalls don't happen. Like it is extremely rarefied air to get a 79 as a rookie. This draft class, I think there's guys that are in this draft class are going to be thankful because moving forward, we're not going to see we're not going to
no,
see this. Like mark my words, you guys, the 10 players that were taken in the first round that are 76 or higher, you were not going to have that next year. So I don't care if you return to college because you want to be the number 1 at your position. Well, guess what? Next year, you're going to be the number 1 at your position and you're going to be a 75 overall or a 76 overall. You're not going to be an 80. You're not going to be an 81. You're probably not going to be a 79. Like this stuff is rare. So yeah, I
and not only that, these are guys who had. I mean, these are guys who out of nowhere had a pro season, taken away from them, and then of course, with everything that happened. So like these were guys who had, I mean, three years after the last draft to like, and they made a name for themselves all 3 of those years. Like, I don't think we're ever gonna see that again. If we do see a guy who is like elite for 3, 4 years, I think we're at least gonna tell them, why are you staying for 3 years in college? Like, don't do that. Like,
right.
I get it, guys. Like, you may think because of this class, oh, if I stay 4 years, this is what I'm going to get. There is a big difference from what happened. There was some stuff that happened behind the scenes that kind of led to why this draft ended up being so loaded as it was. I don't think
Yeah.
we are ever going to see anything like this again.
All right. So I want to get out of here in a few minutes. We're at the back half of the first round here. Um, I brought him up earlier, Tyrese Evans and Rondell Smith. I said this was educational. And the reason I say this is educational is because there's such a gap in where we saw this position, right? So Tyrese Evans and Tyrese Evans at Penn State, Rondell Smith at Notre Dame, both came in at a 74 overall. And then if you go all the way back, like again, Rojas is more like your defensive end, Ethan Marks defensive end. If you're looking at the like edge rushing linebacker, you got to go all the way back to the 3rd overall pick with Nick O'Quinn. So
Yeah.
Nick O'Quinn comes in at 78, and then literally 28 picks later, 27 picks later, we see the next edge rushing linebacker, and that is Tyrese Evans and Rondell Smith. As as the person who put together rankings for all of these positions, you've got um, Tyrese Evans, Rondell Smith gone. Who are you looking at that, in your opinion, are the next best available edge rushing linebackers
Well, to me, I had Hassan Bird and Raheem Underwood over
ahead of
those
these guys?
guys. Yeah.
Okay,
So obviously, if I'm going off of the board that I made, then it's got to be Hassan Bird and Raheem Underwood. I actually thought Hassan Bird was the second best after Nick O'Quinn. I may have missed out on something. I don't know. Um, but Smitty has his reasons. So Hassan Bird to me was the second best. Um, so we'll have to see where they go. I mean, and not only that, you say educational. I mean, we only saw two defensive ends. I mean, now I know they're called edge rushers, but they're still true defensive ends. You still got Russell Shackelford, Randy Wilson, Cena Hanoi, Will Wolford. Like, if this was a draft 2 years ago, those four names, they would
sure,
have been gone by this point.
sure.
Like, so it's kind of shocking. We're just seeing the big change that's going on right now in the pros, where we're seeing a lot more 3-3-4 than we are with the 4-3. Maybe it's just the type of talents that's in the college series. Um, but it's just crazy when you have like those names that I just said, and they didn't go in the first round, and you see players like Tyrese Evans, Rondell Smith. Like, is this more of just team? Maybe that's just filling out a need, but more than like best player available. Like, is this a team like, well, let's just hit the needs? And to be fair to the Celtic Tigers and the Condors, those are teams that really don't have, you know, like because I said it on the draft. There's like a need, and then there's like, hey, this is a need, but this isn't like a need that's going to get us into like trouble if we don't address this like right away type of something, you know.
So let's do this because I'm curious. There's You just brought up a lot of names: the Russell Shackelford, the Randy Wilson, the Cena No AI, Will Wilfork, as
Troy
the like
Ruben, yeah,
Troy Rubin, right? And then we can look at some of the other more linebacker type edge rushers. You want to look at the Hassan Bird, the Raheem Underwood, who you mentioned. Obviously, you can see here you had ranked higher. In looking at those guys, if we're talking about Shackelford and Wolfork and Wilson and Anoa'i, Hassan Bird, Raheem Underwood, who like give me a case for which one of those guys goes first next. Like, who is the guy? Clearly, you just said yourself you were a little bit off on Tyrese Evans and Rondell Smith. Does that mean that Hassan Bird might fall quite a bit? Like, are you taking Hassan Bird ahead of Russell Shackelford? Are you taking Will Wolfork ahead of Raheem Underwood? Like, where are you between the edge rushing linebacker and the actual defensive end style pass rusher?
well, to be fair, in my last mock, I actually only had Manny Rojas and Ethan Marks, the only edges going in the first round, and that's what happened in this draft. Because it's kind of weird because like edge is also another one of those positions, like the Mike linebacker spot, that is like it's already being filled. Like there's like it's already being filled with younger talent, like it has for the last 2 years. Um, and then the edge linebacker spot, I actually had Hassan Bird going to the Bisons in the second round. Um, but I didn't have the edge linebackers go up until the second round, really, to like the Marshalls, the Desperados, the Gunners in the third. So I just wasn't expecting the Celtic Tigers and the Condors. Well, I did have the Condors take a coverage outside linebacker and Ramon Flowers. They ended up taking an edge linebacker, as I just forgot that they ran a 3-4. Um, I don't know. It's just crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I am falling asleep. I'm trying so hard to stay awake. So
Before, yeah. So I don't want you to go any further because clearly Rob's getting offended because he thinks that you're helping me right now. And he thinks that I'm asking you because I want you to tell me who I should pick. Spoiler alert, there's a decent chance that I do take an edge rusher, but I Rob, I got 76 overalls and I didn't have 3 top 10 picks. So um maybe I don't need the help as much, but love you, buddy. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that have not been picked yet. I think Hassan Bird, Raheem Underwood, uh, all the defensive end guys that you mentioned are certainly guys that we could see called. I think
I
Rico
think we see it.
Cardoza on the offensive line. I think Rico Cardoza is a name that could go early tomorrow. You see
I,
him
I
there at
I see a
center.
crazy run going with offensive linemen. Like I hope everyone it's because I know it's boring, but when you look at who has all these picks to begin the second round, just I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it's going to be so and so offensive lineman, so and so offensive lineman, so and so offensive lineman. There's going to
Sure.
be an insane run on offensive linemen tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. Um, yeah, I mean, you can see right there on the screen the list of some of the offensive linemen still available. Obviously, Cody Nelson now in Sacramento, Chuck Bynum in
But Greg
Sacramento.
Dunham, now we got Trip Zimmer, but you still got Brett Sloan, Antoine Moore, Sonny Daniels, Craig Pryor, our very own Trip Zimmer. Like there's some, I mean, Enrico Cardoza, Javier Valero, Luis Franco. Uh, I mean, there's another guy, Keenan Rainey. Like
Yeah,
I'm,
there's a lot.
there's
I,
so
I'm
many
just
guys.
shocked. I'm just shocked that the only team to take an offensive tackle in the first round was me, and I took 2 of them. Like,
Yeah, and
oh wait, no,
only,
no, no,
only.
sorry, no, no, no. Trent Zimmer, the
Oh,
Trent Zimmer
that's right.
went from
Yeah,
Miami. That's
he
right.
went to us. Yeah.
I forgot. Uh, That's right. So one other one. But all right, we're at the 2 hour mark. We're gonna get out of here. Guys, the second round of the RFL draft will kick off at 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. That will be rounds 2 and round 3. So be sure to tune in for that. If you have any
Thank you for
questions,
having me on,
comments,
Don.
of course, absolutely. Questions, comments, anything that you want to talk about between now and then, feel free to reach out. You can reach me in Discord or Pecan in Discord if he's not sleeping until 2 o'clock because clearly he is sleep deprived. So I'll get my boy out of
It's been
here,
a
but
long
thank you guys
week.
very much. Pecan, I appreciate you taking the time. Guys, we will see you tomorrow and get a good night's sleep. Enjoy. And 2 p.m. tomorrow, round 2 of the RFL draft takes place. You better be there. Until next time, take care, everybody.